What is up, Houston Texans fan? Metal Mike here for the Bull Bash, a podcast of the Houston Texans fan. And yeah, it's Victory Monday, baby. You know, there are games you watch and you just sit there and ask yourself, did I really just see what I saw? I think that's probably the question that I saw most after the Texans' 36-29 victory over the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. Debbie girl, my dog, she's excited and she's chewing on her chew toy tonight. Anyways, back on track here to the game. That game recap, man, it's crazy. There were so many things to keep up with, and if you watch this game and the way it started out, there are times where you watch your team and it just takes you a couple of drives, and you can feel whether the team is flat and they're lacking in energy, or whether they really got it going on. And this game, the Texans felt like they came out flat. When you look at their first series, I mean, it starts off with the Texans getting the football, and Davis Mills, he throws the interception. It's simple comeback route, Christian Kirk. Mills is looking at him all the way. Jaguars defensive back Jerry Jones, he sees it, he reads it all the way. As soon as Mills starts to throw, he breaks on the football and picks that pass off. Now the Texans, they get a break. The defense comes up with a stop with the ball in Texans territory. And then we get a 15-yard penalty. And it's one of those obscure penalties that, for me, 35 years of watching football, I've never heard it called. I didn't even know it was a rule. But Danico Autry gets called for basically roughing the long snapper, which I didn't know that the long snapper is actually a what's considered a vulnerable position, and he's protected. So that means you can't contact him until he comes up and out of his stance, and that's why Danico Autry got the 15-yarder, and that gave the Jaguars a new set of downs, and the Texas defense comes up big in this moment, and they hold the Jaguars to a field goal here. Now, there are certain moments in the game where they can change the course and the outcome, and that was big early for the Texans, just getting that defensive stop, holding them to a field goal early, and not allowing a touchdown after extending that drive with the 15-yard penalty. So that was big. And then it's just like a train wreck that is playing out in front of you. The Texans get the kickoff. Tremont Smith, fields that kickoff and starts to return it. And the Jaguars coverage guy just comes up, peanut punches it. The ball comes out, and Jaguars recover it. Jaguars ball in Texas territory again. And this is why when you look at the box score, the Jaguars has so few offensive yards, because mistakes that the Texans made that set them up on the Texas side of the field. They didn't have long to drive, and in the ensuing drive, very, very short. Trevor Lawrence, a couple plays later, will find Parker Washington in the back of the end zone. Just a little 7-yard pass. Throws a teardrop, toe tap in the back. Great concentration, great footwork to make sure he gets down in bounds. And that would be the start of the Parker Washington show, because on the next drive, the Texans would be forced to punt. And Parker Washington basically fields a punt, kind of goes towards the left side of the field, breaks it back towards the middle, finds a little crease, and runs to daylight. And the only person he has left to beat is Tommy Townsend. And Tommy Townsend, as good of a leg as he has, he's not going to sit there and keep up with Parker Washington at full speed. So there's another 6 points. And within those first 3 possessions, we've got a 15-yard penalty on the special teams. We've got a fumble on the special teams. And then we've got a punt return for a touchdown on the special teams. And Frank Ross is absolutely losing his mind on the sideline. They cut to him, and he's not having a good day. Thankfully, Frank got it reined in after that, got everything tightened up. But You know, the fumble by Tremont Smith is a question that we have Texas fans been asking all season long. Why do you not just put Jalen Noel back there? Because for me, you got an offense that's struggling. You want to set them up with the best field position possible, give them the shorter field to play. Just makes sense to me. And your best return man is Jalen Noel. So just put him back there, let him field the kicks. It's not like you're using him for an abundance of offensive snaps. He had 23 snaps in this game offensively. So he did not have a ton of offensive snaps. So it does not make sense to me why they keep trying this rotation at returner. Whether it's kick return, whether it's punt return, put Jalen back there, let him field the kicks, let him set you up with a good field position, because that's what he's doing. That's how he's contributing right now. He's not seeing a heavy workload on the offensive side of the ball. Now, the Jaguars at this point, it's 17 to nothing, and then the Texans would get a field goal from right, and the Jaguars would get another field goal for Cam Little, and then the Texans go on a drive. They get down to the 5-yard line, and in the red zone, the Texans just run a simple toss out there to the left. Woody Marks gets some space. Everything's basically lined up in the middle, and Woody Marks just finds enough room to get the corner pylon and gets 7. I mean, it's a great run, great call by Nick Caley, and honestly a little bit concerning on our part as fans watching this, because we've seen the way that the past 2 weeks have played out with Nick Caley calling plays in the red zone. So it was nice to see something other than a quarterback sneak or just a run into the teeth of the defense. And the Texans tried finally to get that play stretched out and get a good athlete like Woody Marks out to the perimeter. And that is actually the first red zone rushing touchdown of the year for the Houston Texans. Shows you just how bad we've been in the red zone. Now, toward the end of the half, Jacksonville gets the ball back. They're trying to get within Cam Little's field goal range. And just a great play by Derek Stingley. He's in the trail position on the wide receiver, and he's on his inside hip pocket. And as Stingley does a lot of times, he just gives a little bit of room where it looks like the receiver's got a bit of a window for Trevor Lawrence to throw in. Lawrence makes a mistake of throwing this ball on the receiver's numbers instead of out in front of him. And Stingley just accelerates and one hand grabs that thing right out of the wide receiver's hip pocket. One of the best interceptions that you're going to see on the year, and pretty much any time on a football field. Just a hell of an athletic play by Derek Stingley. And then the Texans get some things going. They get a big gainer to Nico Collins, but unfortunately, that's going to end the half because time runs out. But you can kind of feel the momentum starting to swing here. And then within the third quarter, Jacksonville starts running up that scoreboard again. It's 20-10 going in at the half, and the Jaguars would add themselves a touchdown by Travis Etienne and a missed 2-point conversion. They get another field goal, and that would be it for the Jaguars. No points for the Texans going into the fourth quarter. And at this point, it's 29-10. And you're thinking it's just one of those days as Texans fans. But that was not all she wrote. Because Davis Mills, he comes in there, and he leads a long scoring drive down there. He finds Jaden Higgins down in the end zone for the first touchdown. The Texans' defense was phenomenal. They're coming up with stops. They get the Texans the ball back. Another long drive down the field. And Davis Mills finds Dalton Schultz in the back of the end zone with a nice little toe tap touchdown receptions. Dalton does a great job of high pointing the football, coming down in bounds with it, dragging that right foot, gets that toe down, and Texans get that touchdown there. Then the 2-point conversion to Nico Collins. That was a hell of a catch. I mean, it's out towards the right pylon, and Nico just extends out one hand, grabs that thing, and it was a hell of a catch. And the Texans are right back in this thing, and it's getting down there. And the Texans again get the football. They drive down the field again, and then Davis Mills gets out of the pocket on a scramble, gets down that left sideline, and gets a 14-yard touchdown, diving for that pylon. And at this point, it's now 30-29. The Jaguars get the ball back, and it's just you see the back and forth where the Jaguars kind of get into Cam Little's field goal range when Trevor Lawrence sits there and breaks containment of the pocket. He gets a long scramble. The Texas defense lose sight of him. The defensive backs are in man coverage. Your backs to him. They're running away from him. They don't recognize that Lawrence has broke containment and he's scrambling up the field. And there's still time on the clock. So Jacksonville is trying to kill some time. And what happens next is just Trevor Lawrence is back to pass. He gets sacked. And then that knocks him out of field goal range. So he goes back to pass again on the next play. And that's when I believe Will Anderson gets a hand in there, deflects a pass right into the arms of Sheldon Rankins, who just takes that baby back to the house. And now we're looking at a score, the final score, of 36-29 for the Houston Texans. One of the most improbable comebacks that we've seen as Texans fans. And the last time that the Texans were in a game like this, where you had a comeback like that, we were on the wrong side of that. Of course, a lot of us don't want to remember that. That was the playoff game to the Kansas City Chiefs that we lost. So it feels good to be on the right side of this thing. Now, with that game, it was what you call the Davis Mills legacy game. That's up to this point, Davis Mills has been known as the guy that beat the Colts and got us the pick that wound up being C.J. Stroud. That was his legacy until this game. And it was a great game for Davis Mills. He came out there. He got hit. They gave up sacks. The pressure rate in this game was 44.9, which is the highest on the season. And that offensive line was patchwork. You're missing the entire right side of it. C.J. Stroud's not playing. Defensively, Jalen Petre's not playing. And then we lost M.J. Stewart in that game to a quadriceps injury, which is effectively ended his season. So now Texans are in a rough spot as to what to do at the safety position because they're going to have to figure a few things out. Are we going to see Jimmy Ward back anytime this year? Maybe the rookie, what's his name, Reed, that we drafted? So the Texans got a lot of things to figure out back there, but it was a great game. And before this game, I went on and I made my pregame matchups, given some ways that the Texans could win this game. And just seeing how it went, when I went back and I looked, one of the things I called for was Jarrett Patterson to go in at left guard because before they made him the starting center, Jarrett Patterson got reps at left guard. And with Ed Ingram being out, I felt like the Texans would do good to move Juice Scruggs over there to right guard because he was rotating with Ed Ingram in training camp. So he's got some more recent reps over there. And the Texans decided to go with Sidy Sow, who was a former New England Patriots player that they brought in after he was cut. And we quickly saw the reason why the Patriots cut him. I mean, he got dog walked back by the Jaguars defensive tackle, basically dumped on his ass. And he had 9 offensive snaps, and that was all she wrote for him. I mean, he was done. And hopefully we don't have to see any more of him. But another thing I was talking about in the pregame matchup was I wanted to see more of Woody Marks, the rookie running back from USC. Woody Marks had himself a nice little game. Wasn't anything eye-popping. He had himself about 14 carries, 65 yards, rushing touchdown. And I think he had 2 receptions, and he averaged about like 9 yards a catch. So Woody Marks, even though he didn't start the game off as RB1, that was Nick Chubb. Most of the time, Chubb is the starter in there, but the reps ultimately will show you who the true RB1 is in the game. And I've always felt like the reps should go to Woody Mark. Woody Mark is a younger back. He's more explosive. He's more productive. He offers you more versatility than Nick Chubb does. Nick Chubb is basically a guy that's going to get you the hard yards between the tackles. And he was effective doing that this game. The Texans didn't run the ball much because of the fact that they were playing from behind for the entirety of the game up until they took the lead at the very end of the fourth quarter. So they did not have much of a running game, but the moments that they did choose to run the football, they were very, very effective. They were averaging around like 6 yards a pop. And they had that Jacksonville Jaguars defense gassed. They were gasping for air. The Texans were running a lot of offensive plays because the Jaguars' offense was just going 3-and-out against the Texas defense in the second half. And the Texas defense did a hell of a job in that fourth quarter. When you have a score in the fourth quarter that goes 26 points unanswered by the Texans in that fourth quarter, that is a hell of a day from your defense. And granted, it wasn't the defense's best day because this was the most points that this defense has allowed all season long to a Jaguars team that was down its starting 2 wide receivers in Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter. But the Jaguars were able to get some movement on the ball, but the most part of it was they benefited from the short fields. Now, one of the other things I wanted to see was the rookie wide receivers outpacing Christian Kirk and Braxton Berrios, and we did get to see that. Christian Kirk had 3 targets, 1 reception, 3 yards on the day. Not a great game for him. Jalen Noel, on the other hand, had 4 receptions on 4 targets for 35 yards, averaged about 8, almost 9 yards per catch, and 3 of those 4 targets were for first downs. So he was becoming more of a focal point in the passing game. And then you had Jaden Higgins, who I think he had like 56 yards receiving. He had about 7 targets, and he was doing a great job. He also had 4 of his targets went for a first down. So that was tremendous to see the uptick in the production from the rookies. And Nico Collins was featured, and we got to see Nico have the best game of the season for him. It's probably the first game, if I'm not mistaken, that Nico Collins had broken 100 yards receiving. And he had 15 targets, I think about 10 receptions, and they went for 136 yards. So I said in my video that this game was going to tell you a lot about Nick Caley as a play caller. And Nick Caley struggled initially in that first half and throughout the third quarter before finally finding a rhythm of this offense in that fourth quarter. And as Texas fans, we got to hope that this is the start of something, that Nick Caley has finally had the light go on. And this is going to continue because right now, with the Texans being 4-5, we're a game under 500. We're chasing that wild card spot. It looks like the AFC South is out of reach unless the Colts have some sort of a collapse here toward the end of the season, which the Colts have done it before. So it's very, very likely, though not much with the way that Jonathan Taylor has been playing. He's having a career year for the Colts. But the Texans have got to find a way to start stacking some wins here. And this schedule is going to be getting a lot tougher. Jaguars were a game that, honestly, we should win if we're healthy. But with this game, it was hard to tell. I mean, we're missing the right side of our offensive line. We're missing CJ. We're missing Jalen Petrie. And before the game was over, we were missing MJ Stewart. So, the Texans got to play the Tennessee Titans. And then the other games that I see on schedule that look like we can win right now is going to be the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. And we got some games coming up. We got 2 games against the Colts. We got to play the Chiefs. We got to play the Buffalo Bills on a short week on Thursday Night Football. That's not going to be an easy schedule. So the Texans are going to have to pull out some wins here if they want to make the playoffs. Now, into some other news. The New York Giants today fired Brian Daboll. And I'm bringing this up because Brian Daboll has a history with the New England Patriots. And we all know that the guys in front office here in Houston, Nick Caserio, Nick Caley, Jerry Slapinski, and a lot of the other guys that are on this coaching staff were former New England Patriots players. It would benefit the Houston Texans to try to leverage that New England connection and bring Brian Daboll in as an offensive consultant, another senior offensive assistant. And the reason why I would advocate for this is because Brian Daboll is an experienced offensive coordinator. And he's got familiarity with the system, so he will integrate with this very, very quickly. Now, Brian Daboll is coming off of a bad stint with the New York Giants. And the one thing you have to remember about this is, before the injury to Cam Scatterbo, Brian Daboll was winning some games. They were having some success with Jackson Dart and him. And then Scatterbo got injury, and they just kind of went off the rails from there. But they were still playing some decent football games. They were losing some close games. And ultimately, the Giants just decided to part with Brian Daboll. And in his time with the New York Giants, he's had receivers with the likes of like Sterling Shepard as his starting receivers. He hasn't had much talent on the offensive line. They traded away the Giants' best weapon in Saquon Barkley. And he hasn't had a quarterback because it was Daniel Jones and Tommy DeVito. So he's been handicapped there. But before he went to New York, in Buffalo particularly, he was the start of the good Josh Allen. He was the guy that got Josh Allen on track, got him to rein it in, to not throw as many interceptions, and be a more efficient quarterback. And he did that by maximizing the passing game to the tight ends, emphasizing more of a run, and managing Josh Allen. Now, a lot of people are concerned about the way that he used Jackson Dart up there because of the fact that Jackson Dart was taking a lot of hits, doing a lot of unnecessary scrambling. But when you look at that offense that was missing Cam Scatterbo, it was missing Malik Neighbors, who's done for the year. When you don't have that many options, then yes, you're going to have to pull that card. You're going to have to do that with your quarterback. But down here in Houston, we're not relying on him to be the play caller. What we would be bringing him in for is just very, very simply to help with game plans and to help get this offense on track, get it going, get it to be a little bit more consistency, and help Nick Caley adapt to becoming a play caller in the National Football League. That's what you can use Brian Daboll for. And he's also a pretty good quarterbacks coach. So my theory would be keep him here until next year, and then we use him to replace Gerard Johnson as the quarterback's coach for the Houston Texans next season, is what I would advocate for. So those are just my 2 cents, and if you guys check it out, I'm going to be dropping another video. I'm going to be talking about the offensive line, and then coming about Wednesday, we'll be checking out to see where we're at with the injury reports. See how close C.J. Stroud is to being back, what they're going to do about replacing MJ Stewart, and see if there's anything else that has popped up there. So with that, I want you guys to have a great night. Enjoy this Victory Monday. I know we all did. And, hey, if you're looking for some fun, some shits and giggles, go pop in on the Jaguars podcast right now because they're basically crucifying Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville right now. It's funny as hell. You go in there, you look at them, and they're basically trade Trevor Lawrence, cut Trevor Lawrence, do whatever to Trevor Lawrence. Sucks to be a Jaguars fan right now, and after losing 5 close games this year, all of our 5 losses has been one possession games. It feels good to come out on the right side of one for this week. So hopefully the Texans do not overlook the Tennessee Titans next week. We get a good victory, and we can continue just as 1 week progression to see if we could kind of stack some victories together. So with that, y'all have a good night, and I will see you next time.